The question didn't come from concern. It never does. It came wrapped in a smile, the kind that looks harmless until you hear the words behind it. "So," my brother said, leaning back in his chair, glass in hand, voice just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. 27 now, right? A few heads turned. Not all. Just enough. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I knew what was coming next. "And still no boyfriend?" he added, a small laugh already building in his voice. There it was, placed casually, like it wasn't meant to sting, like it was just conversation. The table reacted the way tables like this always do. A couple of quiet chuckles, one awkward smile, someone pretending to focus on their plate, because no one wants to interrupt something they don't have to be part of. I smiled slightly, not defensive, not embarrassed, just neutral. "Not yet," I said. Simple, clean, enough, but not for him. He leaned forward a little, like he had more to offer. Of course he did. "You're getting a bit late, don't you think?" he continued. "I mean, most people have figured it out by now." More laughter, this time louder, because now it wasn't subtle anymore. Across the table, my mother shifted uncomfortably. "Leave her alone," she said softly. But her voice didn't carry weight. "Not here. Not in this moment." "It's just a joke," he replied quickly. "It always is. Until it isn't." "I'm just saying," he added, shrugging. "Maybe you're being too picky." Another pause. Then, "Or maybe no one's picking you." That one landed, not loudly, but deeply, because now it wasn't teasing. It was judgment. And everyone heard it. The table went quieter, not silent, but aware. I picked up my glass, took a small sip, set it back down, still calm, still steady, because reacting would have given him what he wanted, and I wasn't interested in that. "You worry too much," I said. Not sharp, not defensive, just measured. He smirked, because from his perspective, he had already won. "Just trying to help," he said. Of course he was. That's what people say when they cross a line they don't want to acknowledge. The rest of dinner moved on. Different conversations, different topics. But the moment stayed. It always does. Because once something is said, it doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right time. "Dinner at 8 tomorrow," my mother said as we were leaving. "Don't be late." I nodded. "Bring someone if you want," she added, almost casually. I paused for a second, then smiled. "I will," I said. And this time, I meant it. The next evening, the house was louder. More people, more energy, more expectation. Because now, there was something to see. I arrived right on time, alone. At first, my brother noticed immediately. Of course he did. He always watches for opportunities. "Well," he said, clapping his hands together lightly, "looks like it's just you again." A few people smiled, waiting, because now they expected the same story, the same outcome, the same version of me. I didn't respond. I just stepped aside, slightly. And then he walked in, not rushed, not loud, just present. The room didn't react immediately. That's how you know it matters. Because real presence takes a second to register. Then everything shifted. He didn't announce himself. Didn't need to. The room adjusted anyway. Subtly. Naturally. The way people do when something different enters the space. My brother's smile held for a second longer than it should have. Then it faded. Not completely. Just enough. Because now, he wasn't sure. "Sorry I'm late," he said calmly, his voice low but clear enough to carry across the room without effort. Not loud. Never loud. People like him don't raise their voices. They don't need to. I turned slightly toward him, not surprised. Not performative. Just aligned. You're right on time, I said. He nodded once. Then his eyes moved across the room, not scanning, assessing, understanding. And in that moment, everyone felt it, even if they couldn't explain it. Are you going to introduce him? My brother asked, trying to recover his tone, but something in it had already changed. Less confident, less certain. I looked at him, then back at the room, then at the man standing beside me. This is Daniel, I said. Simple,
Clean.
but not enough, because names don't carry weight on their own. What does Daniel do? Someone asked from the table.
Of course they did.
Because in rooms like this, value is measured in roles, titles, numbers. I almost smiled, because this part always matters. He leads acquisitions, I said.
A pause. Small.
But noticeable. Acquisitions for what? My brother asked quickly. Too quickly. Because now he needed clarity. He owns the firm, I replied. Silence. Immediate. Because now the structure had changed. What firm? He asked. And that's when Daniel spoke. For your company's parent group, he said calmly.
No emphasis.
No performance. Just fact. The words didn't hit all at once. They settled, layer by layer, because now they had to process it. My brother blinked.
Once.
Then again. That's not funny, he said. But no one was laughing, because now it wasn't a joke. It's not meant to be, Daniel replied. Still calm, still controlled. And that's when it happened. The moment, the exact moment, everything flipped. Because now he understood.
Not fully.
But enough. You're telling me, my brother started, but the sentence didn't finish. Because there was no version of it that made sense anymore. I stepped forward slightly, not to interrupt, to complete. You said I was being too picky, I said. Not angry, not emotional, just clear. Another pause, because now he remembered. You said no one was choosing me. The room didn't move, didn't react, because it didn't need to. Everything had already changed. And you were right, I added. Silence. Because he didn't understand. Not yet. I wasn't waiting to be chosen, I finished. Another pause. Longer. Because now
He did.
I was choosing. Nothing moved after that.
Nothing needed to.
Because the shift was complete. My brother looked at Daniel, then at me, then back at Daniel again, trying to find something, anything, that would bring the moment back under his control. But there was nothing, because control was gone. What company? Someone asked quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. The one currently restructuring your division, he said. And just like that, the silence became real, heavy, unavoidable, because now this wasn't just personal. It was structural. My brother's face changed, color draining, confidence disappearing,
Piece by piece.
because now the consequences were visible. You're serious? He asked. No one answered, because no one needed to. The truth was already there. I picked up my glass again.
Took a small sip.
The same way I had the night before. Only this time, everything was different. You laughed at me, I said.
Soft.
But clear. Another pause. Because now, he remembered everything. And that's fine. Because it was. That was the part he didn't expect. I just hope, I continued, setting the glass down slowly, you remember this moment the next time you decide what someone's worth. Silence. Final. Because now, there was nothing left to say. Nothing left to prove. Nothing left to control. He didn't speak again. Not that night. Not after that moment. Because some realizations don't leave space for words. They just
Stay.
And that's how I knew. He finally understood.